All right, in the last tutorial, we made the basic paragraph and character styles, and we dealt with moving our text across to our other second spread. And in this tutorial, we're going to start adding in graphics. And so it gets a little complicated because we're also going to look at different types of graphics as well. So the first thing that I want to do, though, is I want to move this text into a new layer. So let's create a new layer. And when you select a text frame, you'll see that you see a little red dot there. You can just drag that right up into the new layer, and it's easy. You can also do this when you have multiple objects selected by holding down the Shift key. You can just move them right up. Now, if you wanted to, you could find the layers themselves and move them individually. It doesn't really matter. It's just a different way of doing it. Now I'm going to lock that cover graphic or cover layer so I can't edit any of the stuff. This is going to be called the text layer. And I've also decided that I don't like the color green. Now, it just kind of cycles through all the different colors here, but you can go and pull in any color you want. If you want to make this magenta, now anytime you select these, you'll get magenta as your look. If you wanted to make it blue or brown, you could do that as well. So it's very easy for you to change the colors of your selections if you prefer. Now I'm going to lock that as well, and now I'm going to create a new layer, and this is going to be for my images or graphics. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm doing this so that I can kind of not have to interfere with any of the other stuff here, and we'll just see what happens when we start to move things around. Now we'll start off easy just by placing a very simple graphic. I'm going to go to my assets, and the one that I'm looking for right now is the IBM logo history. The reason I'm bringing this one in is right here at the bottom of the article, they're talking about that. So I'm going to drop that in and put it here on the left edge by just clicking once. And now I want to click on the auto fit to make sure that this thing stays constrained. Hold down the Shift key and bring it back so it's even with the right hand margin. Now take it back to the bottom of the file, and there you go. Now you may notice that this text is not wrapping around this graphic, and that's because we have to add what's called text wrap. Now you can find text wrap up here at the top as well, but I like using the dialog box because it has a lot more options. Now the first text wrap we'll use is around the bounding box. Now you can make it go around all the settings at the same time, but you'll see it starts to interfere with the text on the other side. And so I think at this point it's actually smart for us to go ahead and just do it on the top. And that's because this graphic is at the bottom and I don't want it to go around the other sides. Now you can also hit the W key so that you can unselect it and just see how the results were. Now this is not a beautiful, beautiful high resolution image, but it really does help us tell that story. So that's why I chose to use it. Now there's some other graphics that we can also start to pull in. Here we start talking about Fibonacci. And so there's another image that I'm interested in, which is the Fibonacci man or the Vitruvian man. And so if I go to my assets, I've got a small Vitruvian man here. And I have two different versions of this, just so you can see what's going on. I thought we might explore some more advanced things with images as well. So I'm going to bring in both real quick, go into InDesign and just drop them down. Now you'll notice, let me hit the W key again, one of them comes in with a background that's white and the other one is not a background that's white. This is just a regular grayscale image and this one is a bitmap image. And I'm going to show you how that's actually created. I'm going to delete the grayscale and I'm going to open up that grayscale image in Photoshop. I think I opened up both, but that's okay. So what I've got here is, if I go look at my layers, I've got just a regular flattened image, and it's a grayscale. If you come up close, you can see that you might have some gray pixels in here versus black and white only. And it's not a super high resolution image, so that's not perfect for this, but that's okay. I'm going to go to Image, over to Mode, and you'll see that since I'm in grayscale, I have the ability to jump over to Bitmap. Now a bitmap allows me to apply either a 50% threshold or some sort of dither thing. If I use dither, a diffusion dither, we typically want to take our pixel dimensions to be up a little bit higher when we do a bitmap. So I'm going to click OK and just see what happens if I get up real close. You'll see what happens is that it converts everything to just black and white. And so here it has a bunch of different dots, and that makes it look like it was a grayscale image. Now, the other one, I chose to use 50% threshold, or actually that's what I wanted to do. So let me undo that. I'm back to the grayscale. I'm going to go to image, adjustments, no, image mode, bitmap. I'm going to change this to 50% threshold, click OK, and there you can see that's what I was looking for. That's a 50% threshold versus a dither pattern. You can see it makes things a little bit more solid. Now, the point of this, though, is that when you want to place this image and when you use it in here, you have the ability to actually assign other colors to it. So if I go to my swatches, I can assign a blue, well, let's say if I click on the object itself, there we go, I think I have it selected now, I can actually assign a color directly to that object itself. And that is really, really neat about bitmap images. And you could even, if I select off of it, you could have a different color on your background. That could be a little wonky on this particular file, but I think that's pretty neat about bitmap images. Now I'm also going to auto fit this and make it nice and small. And it's going to go somewhere up in here, and I'll do a text wrap around it. And this time I am going to keep it the same around that bounding box. And here's what you'll see when we see that particular image. Now, it's not amazing, but at least it's an image that relates to our article. I'm actually going to take that up until that kind of fits there at the top. That kind of works for me, at least for right now. I'm going to hit W just to see what it looks like. You'll see that it doesn't look great until you zoom up really close, but at least we have kind of a nice Vitruvian man that kind of relates to the Fibonacci sequence stuff that we're talking about. Now, moving on to the next page, we have a couple other graphics that we're going to pull in. And what I want to do is find both of those. So I'm going to go to my assets, and that's these two images right here. Now I'm going to pull them both in at the same time and place those images. And you might notice when I clicked that they became different sizes. Now the reason why is, if you remember, we did this earlier. I think I pointed it out. This particular image is 150 dpi, and it has its dimensions here. And you'll see that the pixel dimensions are 640 by 418. This one is the same pixel dimensions, but its inches and its resolution are different. And so you want to make sure every single time you are about to bring images in, you want to double check and make sure you have the right sizes. Anyway, I'm going to hold down, click on that auto fit, take this thing down until it matches up the height of the other one. And so I have both of them at the same exact width, put them next to each other, and I'm going to group those together real quick. And the reason why is because I've decided I want to put this at the top of my file. The problem is I haven't considered bleed. So if they're a group, I'm going to go back in and hit my W key. I can then hold these and take them up a little bit, but you'll see that it does some weirdness. It doesn't seem to do exactly what I wanted. It's just something to be mindful of. It doesn't give me exactly the type of scaling I want. So you really have to scale these things somewhat separately, and that can be a real problem. But let's say that I know that I want to put a box that's even on both of these. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to create a frame that's going to go down to the center like that, and I'm going to just make it black like that for right now, so I can see that it's going to go right down to the center of my page. And then I'm going to make another one that goes to the other side, and this one has to be a little bit longer because of the bleed, but I have them meeting right there in the center. Now that I have those two boxes, now all I have to do is drag those images back in and place them right into the box that I want. Now, selecting both boxes, we'll click on the fit frames proportionally, and you'll see that we've placed those images very successfully. Now, this is a really common way of doing things. You create a frame and figure out what the size of that object is going to be, and then you place your graphics into that object. So totally a successful way to do this. And of course, we can always change the size of our frames if we need to, and then size those images, fill those frames proportionally with those images. Now we need to add some text wrap to the bottom to move the text away from it, and you'll see we're very successful at placing those two images right down the center of our design there. Now the other image that I want to load in is my logo for Apple. And so this is where things get a little complicated again, of course. And that is because I have multiple logos for this Apple. Now the first one is a PNG. Now PNGs are great because you get transparency, and I could bring this thing in and place it, and it looks all good for me. Need to remember to click off of it and click back on it sometimes. There might be a way to disable that actual hand tool, which I like personally. Anyway, if you zoom up and you look at this carefully, though, right now I'm in the not great performance mode, so let's go to high quality display. You'll still see that I see these boxes, and that's not really clean. And so instead of using a bitmap image, it's better for us to use vector graphics. So I'm going to go to Illustrator real quick and show you that this is the black logo. And it's just a very, very simple vector graphic done in Illustrator. And I also want to point out in my swatches that all I have is black. So I'm going to go over to my InDesign. Back to this. I'm going to drag in that Apple into InDesign. And one of the other nice things about dealing with vector graphics is that you have the ability to do something different with your text wrapping. If I click on that image, or the text wrap for this image, I have bounding box, which is an option, but you can also go around the object shape. And what this allows me to do is to detect the edges of that vector and then apply my text frame, the wrapping to that, which I think is extremely helpful. That is really, really cool, because now, of course, we can start to move around this object. Let's click off of it, click back on, and we can start to move around this object as we see fit in our design. Kind of like apple of our eye being there, and I'm going to kind of keep that there, and I think I got all of it where it has the URL beside the logo. So I actually kind of like that. I don't love the fact that story is inset a little bit, but I think that even works a little bit better right there. So there's always a little tweaking about positioning as soon as you start to bring in graphics. And I don't love this, but that will change later on too. Now, we're going to go and apply some other ones. Now, if I go back to my assets, I want to go to this RGB logo. The reason why is because if you look at it, you'll see that it says plates and document swatches. The plates are just the CMYK, and then the document swatches have all these different colors. In the Pantone one, though, I get these plates that indicate all these special colors as well as document colors. Now, what's happening here is when I go into the vector graphic that I did, and it's just the RGB EPS, all I have are just regular RGB colors for all the different ones here. And you'll notice they're global colors, but they're not spot colors. And spot colors are very different. If I go to the Pantone one, all of these colors are spot colors, and that one actually shouldn't be there yet. All of these colors are spot colors, and they, of course, are in that logo. You'll see that that color is being used on that logo. Now, spot colors travel with that file and import with that file, and that's very, very important. Now, to get a spot color, we can go to our swatch libraries, go to color books, go to Pantone Solid Uncoded, or the new one is the Color Bridge, and I really like the new Color Bridge one. And then you can choose the color you want, double click on it, and you'll see it is added over to your swatches, and then of course you can apply it. Now what's great about this is those colors travel with the file. This one didn't because it's not a spot color, so you would want to change that and make it a spot color if you wanted it to travel. So what I mean by traveling, I'm going to take this RGB logo, drag it into my InDesign file, and drag it up, replacing that particular image. And I want to go over to swatches and just see what's going on. Now, currently, I have all the default swatches that we had here. So I'm actually going to remove all of those swatches. Not that it really matters that I have that selected, because that'll get fixed afterward anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and remove all the swatches and replace it with black. That will turn black. Not a big deal. We'll just change it back to paper, or even none, which is better, as my background color. And let's unselect that. Now, the reason that I wanted to get rid of my colors is that I want to pay attention to what happens when I do bring in images that have colors. So I'm going to go back to my assets, find that Pantone logo, drag it into where that other logo was, and you'll see all of a sudden I get all of these Pantone colors populated in my InDesign document. And that's because all of those colors were spot colors in that document. So now we can select all of those colors, create a new color group folder, and call this the Apple logo. We might need some of those colors later on. You never know. Now, speaking of colors, there's another new tool in InDesign that I absolutely love, and that is being able to make a color scheme from a picture. Now, you can use an image that has multiple colors like this, or I really like this when you bring in color palettes, because you can instantly sample all those colors and bring them in. So I'm going to drag in that image, put it over on the pasteboard, over on the left-hand side possibly, just get it out of the way. And now go over to your tools, and you're looking for the color theme tool. This allows you to click on an image and create color themes from that image very easily. I'm going to use the bright theme, and then click on the swatches over right hand side, and you'll see that it has added those colors to my swatches, and there couldn't be anything more simple than that. Now, I can delete that image because I brought in my colors, and then of course we need to start moving around a couple more things before we do our last image. I want to bring in the text into the last page. So I'm going to go to my layers, unlock my text layer, click on that plus to pull in the text over to the right, and I'm going to make it go about halfway down, add my 3 columns. And then the last thing that I'm going to do here is tell these to be balanced. This way you'll see all of those columns become the same size. Now I can lock that again, or just go back to the images file for the last image that we're going to bring in for right now. That image is probably the most complicated one because I'm wanting to do something really special with it, and that's this Nautilus. When you double click on the Nautilus, you'll notice that it's a JPEG image. Now, when you place a JPEG image, all it is an image. You don't get to do anything with it. You can't remove any colors or something like that. So being able to mask an image is a really essential skill in being able to do advanced page layout. And so with this Nautilus, I'm going to do a selection just based upon just using a magic wand at first, and just click on it. And then we need to inverse that. So another way we can do this is go straight to select mask, and that's a really nice feature too. In fact, it kind of did that automatically for me, but I want to invert that selection. And now I'm going to go in a little bit closer, because you can see I still get some black in here. And so we have the ability to go around the edge with a refine edge tool and get that a little bit closer. And you can also remove some from that edge if you're trying to get it a little bit better. I don't love this tool, but if you refine that edge a little bit, you certainly can get better results. let's see, yeah, I'm just refining that edge, trying to get it better right there. And you can see a little black in there, so I'm just going to just go over it a tiny bit. So I'm close enough for right now. The next thing I'm going to do is just shift this edge back a little bit. You can see that really starts to interfere with my selection there, though. And I'm going to edge detection, take it in a little bit, smooth that out a tiny bit. I don't love that selection once again. Let's see if we can get that fixed a little bit. This can be a bit wonky to do. In fact, at this point, I think I'm going to cancel it and just try it again. Well, let me go back to select and mask. Lots of different ways to get there. Invert that selection. I'm just going to shift the edge in just a little bit, and I'm going to feather that edge just a tiny bit. And edge detection. There you go. I think that looks a little bit cleaner than what I was trying to do. So now I'm going to click OK, and you'll see that I've created just a simple mask. Now with this mask, or selection rather, I want to turn this thing into a channel, or what's called an alpha channel. One way to do this is you certainly can make a mask and then save this as a Photoshop file and bring it in. Totally valid way to do it. Another way, though, is to create what's called an alpha channel. So with that selected, I'm going to go up to the Select menu, click on Save Channel, and I'm going to call this an alpha. Now that alpha channel can be used when I bring this thing in, but I have to save it as a different type of file format. So I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as a TIFF file format, and I'm going to call it the same name, but I'm going to add the name alpha and hit save. Once that's been saved, now you'll see that TIFF file is there, and you would think that you could just drag it in and place it, and it would come in with that alpha. But unfortunately, here's where we have to go through the image placement dialog box. So do File, Place. Let's find that image, which should be hopefully at the bottom of this. There's the one with the alpha channel. And I want to click on Show Import Options and click Open. Now I have the ability to apply an alpha channel to that object so that when it comes in, it already has that alpha applied. Now, to be honest, this is a great way to work, but it is not considered the absolutely perfect professional way, which we may look at in just a second. Anyway, we would add a text wrap to this just like we would any other object. This time we have the ability to wrap around the object shape and detect the alpha channel, which is really, really great. And I'm going to rotate that just a little bit more, and I want to make sure that that text kind of can be seen at the top. I'm going to wrap around a little bit and get in close. I just want to make sure that, there we go. I have the ability to see the end of the article. That will be kind of important. Now, I've got a little bit of extra space here at the bottom, but I might do something with that in just a moment. I think I'm going to add a background image, a background graphic that fills up some of that page so that this end article, the information about the artist or the writer is isolated as its own graphic element. And we still have to put in a couple bylines as well. Anyway, there is another thing that we should know about, and you don't need to do this, but there is another way of doing a selection. And I'm just going to do a very simple way of doing this, which is you really shouldn't do, but I'm going to make a work path using the current selection that I have. This would not be accurate at all because you'd see this path does not match my object well. And so that's something you really have to spend the time to do. But the whole point of me creating this is that I can then save that path, and I could make that path a clipping path. Now, the benefit to that is if I get rid of this alpha channel is when I save this as a as a TIFF file, and it has a clipping path, what happens is InDesign can now detect that clipping path. And if you were to bring in that new clipping path version of it into InDesign, you'll see that it will instantly have the clipping path. Now, as I go in, what you'll also notice is that this clipping path is super, super crisp. So that's a little bit more advanced to be able to create a selection like that, but it always gives you the best results for print. Anyway, we've done a fairly good job with this alpha channel, although you can see a little bit of bleed of that black into it. So it isn't perfect, but it's pretty darn good. At this point, go ahead and move around your objects, make them a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, see what you can do to do a little bit more exciting layout if you want. Just be aware that you need to be able to find the end of the article, and it's going to change a little bit as we bring in our last visual elements.